Hey guys, it's FAQ Friday, so let's jump right in and get your questions answered. And again, if you have a question on any video that I do, in the comments, type in, large letters, all caps, question, and then ask your question. That helps me see them when I'm scrolling through looking for questions for this segment. The first question comes from Suzanne. I've been removing the suckers from my tomato plants, but I'm continuing to see them all the way up the plant. My question is this: do I continue? I live in New England and have a short growing season. I don't want to sacrifice more fruit to develop. Thanks. I love your videos. Thank you. In typical situations, if you have a longer growing season, yeah, you just keep pruning them all the way up, keep plucking out those suckers. If you have a short growing season, there's something I was experimenting with last year, but I didn't get to see it to the end because we ended up moving. And I am going to try it again this year to see. But in theory, when the sucker starts to grow out, you can let it grow to get maybe 2 or 3 sets of leaves on it. If it hasn't produced any flowers by that time, take it off on any that grow. If it produces flowers, pinch off any growth beyond the flowers so that truss will develop, but it won't continue to put on more energy into that side growth. If you try that, let me know how it goes, and I'll fill all of you in once I finish that experiment this year. The next question is from Miriam. I have a steep slope with poor soil that is in full sun. What do you suggest to prevent erosion? I live in Southern California with water restrictions. I cannot terrace the area at this time. I really enjoy your videos and have learned so much. Thanks for all you do. You're very welcome. Terracing is the ultimate way to get the most out of a sloping property. If you can't, then you really want to amend the soil well with compost so it becomes a little more absorbent and holds on to moisture. You also, without question, have to water with a drip system. Drip systems drip very slowly and slowly saturate the ground. Any type of watering from overhead by hand or anything, the water is not going to soak in before it runs off. So you must use drip. The next question is from Sharon. Thanks, Brian. I'm a new gardener, and you're my go-to guy in my learning process. Awesome. My question is, I'm growing potatoes in grow bags. Am I to stop watering them at some point? I've got tremendous growth on them, although I believe some deer have nibbled on my flowers. Also wondered if that might be an issue. Zone 3, Michigan. You stop watering them about a week or so before harvest. And you'll know it's time to harvest when there are flowers. So if the deer are nibbling them, that's showing you there's flowers and you need to start harvesting. Or they may not flower, but they might start turning yellow. That's the time to harvest them. You could always dig down a little bit, see what you find. If it looks like they need a little more time, put the dirt back, wait a week, try it again. Potatoes can't stay in the ground too long unless there's blight present. You can leave them in. And you always will leave at least 1 or 2 that you don't find that'll come up next year. So they've just been sitting there perfectly fine for a year. So even if you feel like you've waited a week or 2 too long, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it's fine. The next question is from Heidi. What are the benefits and disadvantages of drip tape versus drip tubes? Thanks for the video on the drip. When I watched that video back, I realized I did not go over why I was choosing to try drip tape over drip tube. The reason is drip tape lays flatter and is more consistent the entire length of it than drip tube. And so if you're doing long rows, drip tape might be a better option. I'm still testing it out. So far, the actual tape, the drip emitters in the tape, I love. The larger hoses to get it to where it needs to be, I've had some issues with needing some clamps and things, and so I will do an update on that. Give me a few weeks to really get it going and trying it out. But that's the difference. If you're doing a small raised bed or just a little flower bed and you want specific watering points, drip tube is the way to go. Drip tape has to be straight lines. You can't squiggle or make turns in drip tape. So that's another disadvantage of the tape. Again, I'll do a video later to let you know what I really think of it after I've had a chance to use it a little bit more. Nadine asks, why do you have to water containers until water flows out the bottom? Aren't I just washing nutrients away? Can I average the amount of water needed? Thank you for your informative videos. It's hard to average the water needed because you don't know what's going on deep down in the soil. You know, you could have had a hotter week, it could have dried out faster, you could have had a cloudy week, it would dry out slower, but you never really know. Watering until it comes out the bottom lets you see that it's made it all the way through, and sometimes that takes a lot more water than you think. In terms of the nutrients running out, they're going to do that anyway, because eventually they're all going to seep down deep in the pot, maybe some deeper than the roots will actually go to find it, and they're going to come out the bottom anyway. Might you get an extra week? Maybe, but maybe not. So I think the most important thing, even before fertilizer and worrying about the nutrients, is keeping them well watered. Marie asks, how do you stay organized when planning what to plant? Do you use a garden journal or make a garden plan of some kind? I always do a written plan. So I map out, I use graph paper. You don't have to. And I try to map out what I'm going to put where, in what bed. If you're doing crop rotation, that's going to help to keep those year after year. Now, in my book, I've already got planned out beds for you, which include the appropriate companion planting for whatever you're growing. And you can use those, copy those exactly, or there's plenty of other information in the book that tells you what to plant with what, when, where, and all of that good stuff. But I do recommend having some sort of a plan, either in your head that's well thought out or on paper before you start planting. The next one is from Christophe. Hi, Brian. Do you have any direct or indirect experience with fertilizer injectors for drip irrigation systems? And if so, would you recommend a specific brand or model? Thanks for sharing your invaluable knowledge with us. Cheers. I haven't used those, mainly because I haven't had a large scale. I still use, when I'm fertilizing, I use a watering can. That's going to change pretty soon because I'm going to run out of time to take care of everything once I start expanding on growing area. So I will be doing some kind of fertilizer injector. I was given two by a couple of manufacturers to try and hopefully advertise to you guys. I didn't find them to be great quality enough where I would want to recommend them to you. So so far, no. I do know from my experience with drip that Dig, which is available at Home Depot, and Drip Depot, which is available online, are two very good companies. So that's where I would start if I was going to try out a fertilizer injector for a drip system. When I do, I'll let you know. Jan asks, my husband and I are graduating from 5-gallon containers to raised beds. So is there a certain direction, orientation, north, south, east, west, or just whatever is space appropriate? We've settled on 4 by 8 feet beds. Thanks. The typical answer for most, gardens would be the beds are best running north to south. And that's best for long rows of plants where it's row after row after row. In raised beds, you're not really growing that way. You're growing more in blocks or groupings. And so rather than worry about the direction that your rows are going, just worry about planting your tall crops where they're not going to shade your shorter crops. So in the northern hemisphere at least, I would plant my corn, for instance, to the north of a small crop like eggplant. And that way, you're not having any time during the day where that corn is shading that eggplant. That's the most important thing to look out for with raised beds. Next one's from Connie. What are your thoughts on using landscape fabric around the base of your vegetable plants, most specifically tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers? I've read mixed things about it, with some saying it's bad and others it's not a problem. Since yours is the opinion I trust most, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Well, thank you. If you get a good quality weed cloth, it's going to allow water absorption. If you can find a brand that has a gray weed cloth, I know Costco sells a brand earlier in the year with that. That's going to attract less heat from the sun and not heat up the ground so much. But other than that, I mean, I only use weed cloth where it's absolutely necessary. If I can get by with cardboard and mulch, then that's my first go-to choice. But sometimes that just isn't possible. You might have a really weedy situation that's just untamable. And in that case, I wouldn't have any problem with you going ahead and using weed cloth like that. And by good quality, I mean, if it tears really easily, it's not really going to help your problem, and it's just going to add junk to your yard. Diana asks, I've created several new raised bed gardens this year, and in 2 of them I planted strawberries. The soil in the beds have settled, and now the beds are only half full. And my question is, how to add more soil when I'm growing perennials? I'm assuming I would need to lift the plants carefully, add the new soil, then should I do this in fall or next spring when the perennials are still dormant? When you are filling a raised bed for the first time, fill it up all the way to the top and then get inside of it and do the tamping dance all the way over it with your feet and get it pushed down. You're not compacting it because you're not using soil, you're using compost, but it's gonna eventually do that anyway when you water it. And if you do it after your plants are in, you're gonna have the same issue that you're having now. So fill it up, tamp it down, fill it again, tamp it again. You want it right about to the top of the bed because as you water, it's going to go down just a little bit, but that should give you a good start where you're not going to have to add anything, but you will have to add every year. So it's always going to go down through erosion, just through decomposition. So with perennials, you are going to need to remove them every year or two, and that's best done when they are dormant during the winter or fall or very early spring, depending on your climate. Question from Angie. I love the Q&As. Got another one for you. My tomatoes are growing like gangbusters. Very happy you suggested the grassroots bags. However, my Brandywine tomato is starting blossom drop. What can I do to prevent this? Since we are in July, it's heating up pretty much across the board everywhere, and that is most likely why your blossoms are dropping off. Any extended periods of heat above 85 degrees Fahrenheit, that's going to cause your blossoms to drop. And there's really nothing you can do about it other than trying some shade cloth that could lower the temperature on those hottest days just enough to keep them on. Otherwise, keep your plants healthy through those hot times, and when the weather cools off a little bit, the blossoms will stick and the fruit will start to develop. Next question is from Brian. Great name. Our tomatillos have great fruit set, yet the fruits fall off before being ripe. What's going on? Please help. It's pretty common for tomatillos to fall off before they're ripe, especially if you have great fruit set. You know, the plant sometimes feels like it can't ripen all the fruit that it has on it, and it will drop some off. They will continue to ripen if you take them in, keep them in their paper husks, take them in, put them in a dark cabinet, and they will go ahead and continue to ripen. And then you can check on them every few days and then use them when they're ready and you're ready. PY asks, hi Brian, been binge watching your videos these days and now I'm fully confident to start my vegetable garden, especially my favorite tomatoes. Good. Can you please provide a growing guide for grapevines? Well, I have never grown grapes other than when my dad grew them when I was like 10. However, you might know if you watch my homestead channel, Next Level Homestead, that we are planning a miniature vineyard in our Mediterranean garden. And I'm hoping to put that in next January. And so I've been doing a lot of research. And as I put that in, I will definitely do a video on how to take care of grapevine. Lori asks, how do you deal with squash vine borers? Love your book. I actually have a great video on that. I'm going to link it down below in the video description. Question from Teresa. What is the best soil for vegetables in planters? You're going to want to use compost, spent mushroom compost, plant-based compost, manure-based compost. You're not going to want to use garden soil unless you have the lightest, fluffiest loam soil you've ever seen. Otherwise, it will get compacted and will ruin everything you've tried to accomplish. For years, I used Kellogg's Organic Raised Bed Mix. It's OMRI listed. If you're buying from a farm or wherever that's not listed organic, you want to ask them where they get their material to make the compost and if there's any herbicide in it. That's really important right now. A lot of graze-on damage is going around, and you don't want to succumb to that. Gretchen asks, how do you deter chipmunks and squirrels from eating your sprouts and seedlings and seeds? I've never had this problem in years past, but last year and this year, any tender sprout or new seeds, the chipmunks and squirrels chop it down or dig it up and eat it. Yeah, I never had that kind of issue until I moved here, and we've been having a real big problem with squirrels. They love okra leaves, apparently, and they've eaten 2 or 3 batches of mine. What I did before we got sick for a while is I put some rubber snakes out there. And that actually worked for about a week and a half. And then I wasn't really well enough to get out there and move them around. That might have worked better, but eventually they got wise to it and started eating my okra leaves again. So on your recommendation, you guys gave me a recommendation of using tulle, the fabric that you put under wedding dresses, I guess. I found black tulle, which made me really happy because it's almost invisible, especially from a decent distance away. So if you can get black tulle at any fabric store, I would suggest that. I just put it over the okra, stapled it down with landscape staples or any kind of weight, and it's been there for a couple of weeks now, and the squirrels haven't been around. So I think I finally found the answer to the squirrel issue. Okay, that's all the questions for this week. Again, under any of my videos that I do this coming 2 weeks, because we'll do another FAQ Friday 2 weeks from today. And if you have questions on the videos that I put out between here and there, type in question in all caps and then ask your question. That'll help me see it better. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll see you next time.